I've noticed in a lot of my videos that I say so a lot. I'm going to try very hard not to say that at all, but maybe you want to leave a comment just saying how many times you think I'm going to say so during this video. I'm also going to just have this up on the screen for a second, a little preview of a forthcoming course, working on a low poly car modelling guide. So maybe this Blender course, this beginner's guide, isn't for you, but maybe this course coming up will be. So hit the subscribe button so that you get this course as soon as it comes out. Okay, so we're continuing the series we've been working on the cute little van animation, and we've done the modelling in the first lesson. We've looked at rendering in the second, and I want to cover animation now, which is another complicated subject within Blender. But like I always say, we're going to do this in very small steps, and we're going to make 2 simple animations today. So before we go, before we go any further into the video, we're going to go back to our default scene, which we know is new and general, and it's going to go as our friend the cube. And then just down at the bottom, we've got this little animation timeline window. So if I hover my mouse over this line here, I can pull it up a bit to give some more space, and we'll see that we have this playhead. So if I hit the play button, you'll see that it starts moving across, and if I hit this button here, it goes back to the start. It's also space to trigger the playhead, and we're just going to move it to the end point. Okay, so if I go over here to this arrow, you'll see our location settings, and if I move up and down, scrolling on the Z, we can move the cube up and down, and if I set that to 0, it goes back to the center. So let's move this to the start, and what we're going to do is we're going to keyframe in the position at the start. So the keyframe tells Blender what the object needs to be at that particular frame. So if we hover over any of these three locations and hit the I key, I can hear my dog being weird behind. What are you doing, Emily? You're being weird. You're being weird. You're interrupting the videos. Yeah. You mean to say that? Good girl. Okay. That was a milli interruption. So we're going to keep with keyframe now at frame 0. And if we now move the playhead to, let's say, 30, and we move the location up to, let's go for 3, and in fact we can type that in to make sure it's correct, and then hit the I key again, we've set up another point, and Blender now knows if we move the head back and forth. So let's hit play. Very exciting. And now let's put in another frame at 40. We want this to stay exactly the same. We want this to be a pause. So if we now play this back, you'll see that we've got a solid block in the middle. And that's where Blender is knowing that it doesn't need to change anything between those frames. So the reason that we do that is if we put another keyframe in here, and let's set this back to 0, and then hit I. You always need to add in your keyframe with the I key. So it now knows to go up, wait for 10 frames, and then come back down again. If we want to change any of this, we wanted the pause to be longer, we could select this frame here at 40 and hit G key, because we know that G is move for any setting in Blender. And we can move this to, say, 60. And maybe we want the block to come down much faster, so we're going to click on the 80 and move it to 70. And then we're going to click this button to go back to the start and hit space, and it goes up, hovers, and then goes down really quickly. Okay, so that is our location. What if we want to change the rotation as well? So when we get to frame 30, we also need to put a keyframe in here. So let's say we wanted it to start at this position. So all of our rotations at 0, we're going to set that. And then at 40, let's rotate on the Z-axis to minus 30 degrees. Just going to type that in, and then you should be getting the hang of this by now. Hit the I key to keyframe it, and then let's go to 50 and set this to plus 30 degrees. It might not be obvious that it's changed, but and then we're going to keyframe that. Let's move it back. And then if we hit play now, so the only thing that I haven't remembered to do is I need to, so we're looking, and then at 60 we want to go back to 0 keyframes. 0 degrees, sorry, and keyframe it again. And let's play our animation back. Okay, and you can see that we have all of this space here where nothing's happening. So let's shorten the animation to make it 80 frames. And we do that by going to the end and typing in 80 here. And then if I play the animation, it should now loop. So there we go. We've made our first animation. It's not exactly Toy Story. It's not even Minions, but, you know, it's a start. Okay, so we're going to go back to our van scene that we're working on. So if you load up your most recent version. So this is my most recent version of the van. Yours might look different, which is fine, but maybe you want to go back to the previous lessons. And I'm just going to go to the viewport shading view, which is this one over here, and check everything's looking okay. So the first animation I want to do is a turntable animation, and that's where the camera rotates around the object. And that's pretty straightforward to do, especially if we do it using my method. So let's click the camera button to come out of this. So you remember that this is the free view, and this is our camera view. And if I hit the render image, that's what we're going to get out. So first thing I want to do is come out of the camera view and check that my cursor is at the world origin. And we do that by hitting Shift and S, and then choosing cursor to world origin. And then we're going to Shift and A, and we're going to create what is called an empty. So it's down here, and we're going to go plane axes. And then I'm going to hit G and Z and move it up so I can see above the van. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach our camera to this, because it's quite hard to keyframe in all the animation for the camera position, making sure it always looks in the same place. All we want to do is just rotate this like it's attached to a big stick or a big piece of string. So very easy to do. We're going to click on this first, and then we're going to click on the empty. So we need to do it in that order so that Blender knows that we're going to attach this to that. And the most recent thing, the thing that's going to be attached to, is highlighted in orange, or this kind of yellow color. And we're going to hit Control and P, and we're going to choose Keep Transform. And now, if I adjust the rotation, you'll see that the camera is attached to this long piece of string, and it rotates perfectly around. And if we then click on our camera view here, you can see that it rotates around the van. And the great thing is we can now keyframe that. But before we do that, let's position the van camera where we want it. So make sure you're in this mode with the frame around it. And if not, click on the camera. Then go to View, make sure Camera to View is selected. And then when I move this, let's just give ourselves a little bit of space. And I'm pretty happy with that angle. I think that works. And then we're going to select our empty. And let's set our rotation to 0. And then choose where we want the van to start the animation from. So somewhere like that. Oh, it's good to me. Then we're going to go to View, uncheck that so we don't move it by mistake. Then we're going to select our empty and go up to Item, and we're going to keyframe in our rotation exactly like we did before. And let's make this animation 100 frames long. So we're going to move the mouse to here, and we want to rotate the camera 360 degrees. So we can just type that in, click on it, type it in, and then hit I to keyframe it. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm back in the timeline view. I've accidentally changed mine. Yours will still be on timeline, I think, but this is the view that we had before. There we go. That's what I was expecting. So we keyframed in 360 degrees, and there we go. You couldn't see anything changing because the camera had gone all the way around, but if we pan back and forth, you now see that we've got this little animation sequence. Pretty cool. And we're going to change the end frame to 100 so that it loops. And so we've got this animation, but you might notice there's a bit of a problem with it. This might be what you want. It's kind of cool having that pause at the end, but maybe you want it to continually rotate at the same speed, so it's like one of those really satisfying infinite loops. And the way that we do that this is where, unfortunately, the scary stuff appears. I don't need you to worry about any of it at the moment. You can do amazing stuff with this, but we don't need it now. So we're going to click on this little clock in the corner, and we're going to change this to Graph Editor. And all you need to do is click anywhere in the grey area, hit the A key to select everything, then push the right mouse button, change the interpolation mode, which is this one, to linear. So that's telling Blender to not try and smooth out any of the steps, but to just keep it one constant movement. And if we play it back now, you'll see we've got this perfect loop. And that's one of those things where there's a reason it does what it does, but we don't need to worry about that at the moment. So I hope it's not too frustrating for me to just say, oh, just do this and don't worry about it, because we will cover all of these things in the future. But for now, I just want you to get cool, satisfying results. Okay, so let's change this back to timeline. And we're going to render this out. So rendering, if we render an image now, we will render whatever the playback head is at. Okay, so that's cool, but we could render out an entire animation ready-made and ready to go. So the first thing to do is save your file. So I've already called my van turntable, so that's good. And then we're going to go over to this printer, and we're going to change the file format. Yours might be set to JPEG or PNG. We want this FFmpeg video, and then we want to change the container to MPEG-4. Okay, and they can leave everything else as it is. And then before we render the animation, we need to just make sure that the computer knows where to save the file. I'm going to save it to my D drive, but make sure you save it somewhere that you can find it again. And the name should be the same as your file name, so we should be good to go. And then just hit render an animation. And you might want to go get yourself a drink or something, because this can take a while. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so if we go to our file folder where we saved it, and then load up our animation, you should have something like this. Pretty cool. And I'll just set mine to loop. So you've made your first animation in Blender. Good work. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is something a bit more complicated. We're just going to close that down and close that down. And we're going to give this a new file name. So we're going to go, make sure you save this. And then we're going to call this van driving animation. And then we're going to select this empty, and we're going to delete it. And the van will pop back to where it was before we did all the animating. Okay, so before we go any further, you might have noticed if you try to move the van around, weird stuff happens. And that is because the van has things like the wheels and the headlights using the mirror modifier applied to where the van's body is. So if you move the body, everything moves, which is fine, but if we try and animate it, it's going to cause us all sorts of problems. So what we want to do is create, like we do with the camera, something that everything can attach to and keeps everything in the same place. So if we put Shift and A and then make another plane axis, and we're going to move this up to with the Z above the van, and then we're going to select everything that isn't the wheels and the plane. And you'll see that we've kind of not been very organized here. So let's rename some things so we don't get confused. So we're going to go over here, push the F2 key. I'm going to name that plane ground. And we're going to click on the front wheels, and we're going to name these front wheels. So it's F2 to rename anything. Back wheels. And then we're going to select everything that isn't the camera, isn't the back wheels, and isn't the ground. So we're going to select them all with the Shift key. So click on the top one and then the bottom one. And then we're going to hit the Control key and select empty last, so it's highlighted. Okay, so you'll see that it's the brighter color. And then we're going to hit Control and P, so set parent again, and keep transform. And now if we move this around, don't worry about the wheels because they're not linked, but everything else is attached. And I'm just going to hit Control and Z to go back to where we were. So now we can control the body separately to the wheels. So if we wanted the body to move up and down, like it's got suspension, we can do that. If we wanted to rotate it a little bit, we can move the body around. That's maybe a little bit extreme, but you know, so you can have a bit of movement there. Or we could rotate on the y-axis, have the van kind of So the next thing I want to do is take the wheels and we're going to apply the mirror modifier so it's permanent. And it's not linked to the van body anymore. So that's an easy job to do. Click on the down arrow there and click on apply. And now if we move the van body, you see the back wheels move, but these don't. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Okay. And now we're going to make another empty. So with the cursor still in the same place, we're going to go to plane axes and move it up even higher. And then we're going to select both of the wheels. We're going to select this empty, and then keeping the shift key held down, we're going to click on this, and that'll be the last thing selected. And then we're going to hit Control and P and keep transform. And we're going to name this now, so that's main van control. And then if we hit this little arrow, you'll see that our other empty is now underneath it because it's the child of it. And we're going to do the same thing, body control. So if I choose this one, I can move the van body. And if I choose this one, I can move everything. Great, ready to start animating. So let's bring our keyframe back to there and hit our camera button. And I'm going to make this animation, let's go for 130 frames. And I want to move the van. So this is where I want the van to end up in the final shot. So let's keyframe this in now, in fact. So we're going to move the playhead to 40. And we're going to set our location for the main van control. Make sure that's selected. Hit the I key. And I know that I want this van to stay in that spot for, let's say, 60 frames for now. Okay, so we're going to keyframe that. And then we're going to move all the way to playhead 0. Now we're going to hit the G key and the Y key. And then we're going to move the van so it's just out of frame. And then we're going to hit I. And if I play this back now, van drives in, and then nothing happens. So it pauses. Great. And now we want the van to drive off. So let's go to 90. And we're going to hit G and Y and move the van over with the mouse to here. And then we're going to keyframe it with the I key. And let's see what we've got. Perfect. Now, I think I'd like it to be a little bit slower coming in. So we're going to select both of these. We're going to drag around them, hit the G key, and then just move it along a little bit. So let's move this to 60. And then we'll do the same thing with this so that it's go for 110. See how that looks. Perfect. And the next thing I want to do is position this here. And because we've got two controls now, we can move the body of the van slightly. So let's click on this other controller. And if I move it up to 3.2, you'll see that the van body goes up. And if I move it to 3, it goes down. So I want to create the effect of the van kind of like bouncing along as it drives. So let's go back to 3.2 where we were before. And we're going to keyframe that. And then at frame 5, let's make the height 3.3. I think that's a bit high, 3.25. And keyframe that. And then let's go to frame 10 and make that 3.1. And keyframe that. So if we just play that back. I've done something wrong here. What have I done wrong? Oh, I didn't keyframe at 10. So make that 3.1. And then make sure you hit the I key. That's what I did wrong. And then we're going to wind that back and play it. And you'll see that the van kind of moves up and then down. And if we go at playhead 0, and then we want that to go back to 3.2, and keyframe that. So the van does a little bounce. Now, I could go through each of these frames and type them out by hand, but that's very time consuming, and I don't want to do that. So we're going to select these 3, drag a box around it, and hit Control and C for copy. And then we're going to move to frame 20 and hit Control and V to paste. And you'll see that now it's repeated that. So we're going to do that one more time at frame 35. And the van comes to a stop. And then when the van starts to move off again at frame 80, we're going to hit Control and V again. And we're just going to keep going to the end of the animation. And if I play that back, van bounces in and then drives out of shot. It's looking cool. Now, you might have noticed that the wheels on the van aren't moving. So we need to fix that. So what we're going to do is if we click on this, again, we're about to do another classic Blender. Don't worry about why we're doing this. It's just something we have to do. So we need to tell Blender that this is the final state for these wheels and that anything we do afterwards needs to be applied as it is. That's a really bad explanation. This is just a weird Blender quirk. So we're going to hit Control and A. And we're going to choose rotation. I'm just going to make sure I've done it. So click on it, hit Control and A, and rotation. I'm going to do the same for the back wheels. And you'll notice that when we do that, these numbers here go to 0. So we're basically setting the state of the wheels. And then we're going to go to 0 and keyframe. So I think it's the X we want to rotate on. Yeah. So we're going to keyframe this. And then we're going to move to 50 where the van stops. And we're going to type in 720. And again, you're not going to see anything happen. We're going to hit I to keyframe it. But if we move the playhead back and then hit play, you'll see that the wheels are spinning and it comes to a stop. And then at 80 when it drives off again, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to click on keyframe the rotation. And then we want it to come to a stop at 110 where it ends. So we now need to add 720 and 720. Now, maybe you're really good at maths and already know the answer to that. I'm not good at maths, so we're going to type in 720 plus 720, and Blender does the maths for us. And then we're going to keyframe that. And now, if we play it back, see that the wheels turn, and then they start again when it drives off. Perfect. So we've got to do exactly the same thing with the back ones now. So set the rotation at 0, and then at 50, we know that they're going to rotate 720 degrees. We're going to hit I, and then at 80 when it moves off again, we're going to keyframe this with the I key, and then we're going to go to 110 where the animation stops, and we're going to set that to 1440 and hit the I key. And we should have a cute little animation where the van bounces in, comes to a stop, and drives off again. And the great thing about animating in Blender is that anything can be keyframed. So you'll remember, if I click on the headlights of the van and then go to the material, we have this emission material, and that's the glow that the headlight's putting out. If I set this to 0, it looks like the headlights are off. And if I set it to 10, it looks like they're on. So we can animate this. So let's say at frame 50, we want it to look like the van is going to flash its headlights. Let's move to 50. Let's go to 65. And then we're going to keyframe 10. And then we're going to move on one frame because we want it to be like an instant thing. And we're going to set that to 0 and hit the I key. And then at 69, we're going to keyframe it again with the I and set that to 10. And if I just play that bit back, you'll see that the headlights flash on and off. It's kind of subtle, but it's there. And then we're just going to select these, and we can just copy and paste them again. So kind of randomly pick a spot. So there you go, the van drives in, flashes its lights, and drives off again. So I think we've got a second animation here. So make sure you save it. And then we're going to go over to the printer button again. And we're going to give this a new name because it will overwrite your previous animation if you don't. So you have to be really careful with this. Van driving. And then hit accept. And then everything else looks right. So we're just going to hit render, animation, and you know you're in for a bit of a wait now. So I will see you in a minute. And here we go. One cool little animation of the van driving in, flashing its lights, stopping and driving off again. So if you've managed to make anything at all, you've done really well, because animation in Blender, I love it, but it's the most complicated thing to learn. And in our next lesson, we're going to take our van and we're going to customize it, add loads more detail, turn it into a cool little food truck. And then this part of the course is done. So I hope you're enjoying it. And if you want to see the next part, hit subscribe and I'll see you later.